Hi guys, I found a new website that's got some Bible stories on it. I haven't read any of these ones yet. I thought we could read some together. Excuse me. These don't say if they're funny or sad, or there's no categories for them. They're just all in a big group here. And I found one. I wanted to read this one and see what it was. It's called A Fish Tale. And it is by Sola Macaulay. Okay. A Fish Tale. Papa, Mama, I had a dream that I'm going to be used by God. Papa and Mama Fish stared at their 800th son, their mouths hanging open. They wondered if they heard him right. Mama Fish was the first to recover as she swam towards him. Are you sure about this, dear? She said, touching her fin to his, the look of concern written all over her face. Yes, Mama, I have a special duty to perform. Papa Fish said, listen to me, Sunfish. We're fishes. We don't get used by God. We get eaten by bigger fishes and people if we get caught or we spawn till we're aged. But dear, Mama Fish responded, don't you think... My page just went clear down to the bottom. But dear, Mama Fish responded, don't you think... Nonsense, Mama Fish, Papa Fish dismissed. Sunfish is dreaming. Leaving his parents to argue, Sunfish swam out of the home cave and bumped into his brother at the entrance into their home cave. I heard everything. You think you're special, huh? He smirked. I don't know if I'm special, he fluttered his fins with a shrug. I just know that I'm going to be used by God. Huh, said his brother and blew bubbles at him. Sunfish glided out of the cave and felt an unusual current of water sucking him away. He swam and glided until he saw a bright light in the distance. It was brighter than any light he'd seen, even brighter than the sun piercing through the continental shelf. And curiosity got the better of him, and he swam towards the light. He swam until he reached the outer fringes of their territorial waters, following still after the bright light. Tired, exhausted, but determined, he pushed on and closed in on the bright light. It settled on a spot where he stopped. Just then another rush of current swirled up fine sand. When the dust settled, he saw a shiny button on the seabed. He dove down and picked it up by his mouth. It must have been a treasure of estimable value. When bubbles popped up around, he knew the familiar sound, and fear tugged at his heart. He had gone far, too far for Papa Fish to rescue him. A huge gray fish swarmed steadily in his direction. Sunfish, determined to keep the treasure safe, and swam as fast as he could, the big fish hot on his chase. The swish-swash of strong current spun him above till he came face to face with his fate. Clenching his jaws tight against the shiny button, he waited. The big fish lunged at him, and in that moment, when he expected sharp teeth sinking into his flesh, instead, strong current pushed him up out of the grasp of the big fish. A few seconds later, he heard another familiar clunk in the water. The same clunk Father Fish warned about, but this time he knew what he had to do. With the gold button firmly in his mouth, he opened wide just enough to accommodate the hook to pierce his jaw. The hook tugged and pulled him through the water up into the hands of a kind-looking bearded fisherman in flowing white tunic. He wriggled and thrashed himself against the wooden boat as the fisherman removed a hook from his mouth and peered closely to retrieve the gold button. The fisherman smiled. wiped a gold coin, and flung Sunfish into a basket. Sunfish thrashed one more time, feeling exhilarated. Even as he took his last breath, there was a knowing deep down that he had just been used for the Master. And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, Doth not your Master pay tribute? He saith, Yes. And when he has come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, What thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children, or of strangers? Peter saith unto him, Of strangers. Jesus saith unto him, Then are the children free? Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea, and cast a hook, and take up the fish that first cometh up, and when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give unto them for me and thee. Matthew 17:24-27. What'd you guys think of that story? Did you think that was a good story? Did you like that story, Sherm?
It's pretty nice.
This one just caught my eye. I don't know whether to read it or not. It's on a Christian website, so... It's called A Hoe's Revenge.
What?
It's called A Hoe's Revenge.
That's not,
A real late garden entry. I don't know if it's
Oh.
talking about a garden hoe or...
I hope it's a garden hoe.
I'm clicking on it because I want to see.
I hope it's a damn garden hoe.
It's by William Price. I'm not proud of my past. I was made to do a lot of things I'm ashamed of. My master was unscrupulous and held no respect for the law of his hoe. He didn't care if it was raining in winter or blazing hot in summer. I was always outside helping him to make him rich. My master was violent too. This sounds stupid. He wasn't throwing me to the ground. When he was through with me, the people he hired to use me would do the same. He was the type of master that didn't like to get his hands dirty. That's why he hired other partners to use me. He didn't want to go to jail, so if possible, he tried to keep himself distance from the business. I had always wanted to be a respectable hoe.
I don't think you better go on there.
I have always wanted to be a respectable hoe, but as years went by, I began to lose my color and strength. I gave up hope of that whatever happened. If the truth were told, I would have been called a drug hoe. I am very embarrassed I played a part in that illegal enterprise. To my credit, though, and God's help, I finally said enough was enough. I lost my head, literally, and my master threw me in the garbage can. He left me for dead. I was headed for the big furnace, but I would rather be burned up, hoe, than used to grow marijuana in a criminal's garden. I found out God even loves hoes. While I was in the garbage can, contemplating my fate, two hands I've never felt before picked me up and took me to a car. I guess I had some marijuana leaves and seeds on me, as well as my master's fingerprints. I heard a man talking to two-way radio. I think he was an undercover police officer. It seemed I made him happy. I was taken to the sheriff's department. I was being kept in protective custody until my master could be arrested and taken to trial. I was going to get a chance to testify against him. A hoe's revenge. I loved it. In the days that followed, I was joined by more potential witnesses, and I heard my master was finally in jail. Finally, I had my day in court. I'm proud to say I played a major role in sending him to prison for a long time. I discovered the state of Florida doesn't like hoes being used to manufacture marijuana. My master was also sentenced for trafficking in illegal weed. After the trial and my master was sent to prison, I began to wonder what would happen to me. One day I heard the man who found me say that he just got an order signed to burn the evidence. I started to get a little concerned, but when he carried all of the marijuana watering buckets and myself outside, he set me aside as he loaded all the other evidence in the back of the van. Then, to my surprise, he carried me to the trunk of his car and put me inside. It wasn't long before I was cleaned up and repaired. It was amazing what a little duct tape and small nail could do. I was redeemed. I am now a respectable hoe. God saved me from the depths of the drug industry and placed me in one of the best kept gardens in the county. I am not only used with care, but I get up at night in a nice shed. I don't feel the sting of a heavy rain or the biting winds of winter anymore. I am used now to grow beautiful flowers and vegetables. Late at night in the safety of my blessed garden shed, I pray for all the other mistreated hoes in the world. I want them to know God loves them. If He can redeem me, He can redeem all the hoes and garden tools. Oh my God. Oh, wow. How could somebody even think of such a story? I barely got through that. Oh, wow. What do you think of that story, guys? I'd like to hear what you guys thought of that one. Let's see here. La 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 la. A Father's Tragedy by Sarah Negroni. A Father's Tragedy. There was a poor man with 3 daughters. His village had a missionary doctor who had decided to live there to help the community. One day, the eldest of the poor man's daughters got very sick. He knew that the doctor could help if he wanted to, so he waited and waited and waited, but the doctor never came. The daughter died, and the father was grieved. A few months later, the village was having a festival honoring the doctor. The poor man showed up and yelled at the people, "This man had the ability to save my daughter, but let her die. How can you honor a man like that?" The doctor came over to the man and said, "Sir, you never told me your daughter was sick. My doors are always open. If you cannot come to me, just send word, and I will go to you. Why didn't you come for me?" The poor man went home broken-hearted because he knew it was his own fault for not seeking help. A year went by. Now the poor man's middle daughter had fallen ill. Without hesitation, he sent for the doctor. The doctor knew how to help her, but it would be a painful procedure. As he began to operate, she screamed in pain. Although the doctor assured him that everything was okay, the poor father could not bear her cries. He drove the doctor from his house. A few days later, the poor girl died. Now the man was very upset with the doctor, until his neighbor came to him and said that his daughter had the same operation the doctor was trying to perform, and she survived. The poor man wept because he knew again it was his own fault. The poor man and his youngest daughter now lived alone. They had each other, and the father cherished every moment with the girl, but soon she became ill. The doctor came, but after examining her, gave the man the news that there was nothing he could do. The poor man pleaded with the doctor, "Please save her in whatever way you can." But it was no use. The girl died peacefully in her sleep. Now the man's anger burned towards the doctor. How could such a man call himself a doctor? He was useless. He didn't want to help anyone. Weak, pathetic. A week passed and the man sat alone in misery. He barely noticed when the village was being plundered by his enemy. The plunderers did not notice him either. He watched the destruction from the corner he was sulking in. They beat the men who resisted. Every woman and girl was raped and taken as slaves, had his daughters been alive. He wept with his neighbors who lived in agony, not knowing where their daughters were, knowing they were not safe. He thought of the peaceful look on his daughters' faces when they died. When the doctor returned from his trip to the city to get medicine, he saw the destruction and fell to his knees in sorrow. The poor father told him, "Forgive me for not seeking you. Forgive me for not trusting you, even if you don't do things the way I expected. Forgive me for being angry and so full of self-pity that I sat here and sulked while people needed my help." It was really sad. I'm gonna try to find one more. And I'll read the first one. Excuse me. It's by Judith East, and it's called An Angel Hitched a Ride. My husband and I are extremely bad for not using our seat belts. Me personally, I am afraid of being involved in an accident, trapped by the belt, unable to break free. I guess I watch too many shows on the television. There was a particular day we had to take a trip, and were in a mad rush to get to the doctor's appointment. No less from an auto accident I had been rear-ended. We did not have enough time to take our daughter to her grandmother's house first, so we decided to go straight to the doctor's office, and then my husband would take her to his mother's house after we dropped me off. We lived in a little town called Bluefield. It was about 10 miles from the doctor's office. We traveled the interstate with the major part of the journey, and then turned off to a side road for the last mile or so. My little girl was a baby, 8 months old. I did not have a car seat in my car. I was holding her on my lap. I, for some reason or another, decided to put her in the seat beside me and put the seat belt on her. I just had an unsettling feeling, as if someone was whispering to me, "Get her off my lap." I had ridden with her on my lap more times than I can remember. This time was different. It was about 1 minute later. I had just enough time to buckle her up and get my eyes focused back on the road in front of me. I was about to observe a wreck. We were about to become involved in a horrific car crash. My head smashed hard into the windshield, just about knocked the front windshield out of the vehicle with the force of the impact, and my face busted the front dash in half. My little girl was screaming in an eerie, earth-shattering tone. I was so petrified I would never forget that day. I collected my senses and realized my head was still attached to my body. It was only half the hair. I once owned was jammed in front of the windshield of a newly totaled car. In a blink of an eye, the automobile became over a foot shorter from the force of the impact. I turned to sneak a quick look at my baby, not even one tiny scratch on her beautiful little body. I knew that moment we had a very special passenger in the car that day, an angel. We all are creatures of habit and constantly seem to do the same things. I would have never buckled my baby without that special traveler in the automobile warning me. The angel softly whispered in my ear that day. Nevertheless, I am so thankful that the angel needed a ride and whispering in my ear and made me a lesson that day. If I had been holding my lovely child, she would have unquestionably ended up dead. I know that was just one of the many countless miracles. I strive to keep my ears open in order to hear the faint littlest murmur from heavenly attendants. I thank God endlessly for sending an archangel to hitch a ride with us that day. That makes me think of my car wreck that I had when I was, I think I was 18, and I was driving, and my niece was just a baby, and I always had, every time I went somewhere, I always took my niece with me, and I was throwing a bridal shower for my sister who was getting married, and the mother of my niece, and I decided for some reason not to take my niece that day. And I was traveling with a bunch of balloons that I had already blowed up and put in trash bags and put in the back seat. And I was traveling down the road going to pick up my youngest sister so she could help me go to the place to decorate. And one of the balloons got loose in the car and got stuck underneath my gas pedal. Or got stuck underneath my gas pedal and brake pedal. And I couldn't get to the balloon to get it away. And I just looked down for a second to try to move the balloon. And next thing I know, it all happened so fast. I had went through a field, went through a fence. The car went round in circles and got all beat up, and the pole went through the car. The car was totaled, and I was just in shock. I'm like, I thought I just was going to drive out of there because it happened so fast. I didn't know what was going on, and the car wouldn't move, so I got out, and I'm like, all the tires was flat, the windshield was busted out. There's a pole in there, and I wasn't hurt. I had a bunch of glass in my head, and I had a migraine for 3 days straight. I didn't go to the hospital or anything, but I think an angel came that day because this is a road that's not traveled by many people, and there was nobody around, and I got in that wreck, and somebody did come by and asked if I needed help, and I said, do you have a cell phone? And he didn't, so he went to call somebody. But then out of nowhere, this woman came over, and I don't know where she came from. She said she was an off-duty police officer. She had her kids out today, but I didn't see no kids with her. And she came over, and she stayed with me the whole time and made sure I was okay, and she got a hold of the police, and the police was there, and she stayed the whole time and made sure that the police was taken care of. And then next thing I know, she was gone. And I think she was an angel sent to take care of me that day. Still to this day, I think she was an angel. God sent her to be with me that day. She knew exactly everything to do. I mean, what's the chances being on a road where hardly, there's not that much traffic, and you just get in an accident, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, appears a nice lady, off-duty police officer who takes care of everything and is there with you the whole time, making sure everything's okay. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you turn around and she's gone, and I'm there at the police officer, and he takes me to my sister's house, and I was still shooken up. The car had to be towed. It was totaled. And I only had liability, so I was out of vehicle. But I did not get hurt that day, and I thank God for putting in my head that day not to take my niece, because if I would have, that pole would have came right through where she would have been sitting in her car seat and killed her. It would have came right through the passenger side, and that's where she would have been, in her little car seat. And she was with me every time I went somewhere. That time I didn't take her. So God told me, you know, don't take her for some reason, and that's why. So I just wanted to share that story with you guys. This story made me think of that. But I do swear upon that that lady who helped me was an angel, and that I was told by God, you know, not to take my niece that day, to keep her safe, because she would have been dead if I would have took her with me that day. And like I said, I only had a head full of glass, and I had a migraine for 3 days straight, but other than that, I was fine. But anyways, guys, I will let you go, and I will see you tonight when I do tonight's Bible reading of Psalms and Proverbs. I hope you guys have a great evening. Love one another. Bring those souls to Jesus. And I'll see you guys tonight. Bye.